This is Jared Collinson, co-owner of Flight Performance and Fitness, a thriving gym in Massachusetts. The crazy thing about Jared's story, he left a six-figure personal training career to open his own facility in just 6 months with no investors and zero business experience. But success didn't come easy.
We went over budget, probably close to $200,000. We ended up getting a fine and getting stuff shut back. So it was like, I'm either going to have to close my business for 2 months and lose all my clients to other gyms, or I'm just going to take a fine on the chin. So I was like, I'm taking a fine on the chin. We opened this place. We went way over budget is realistically what I'm saying.
In this episode, Jared breaks down how he built a loyal membership base from scratch, his hard-earned lessons on taxes, budgeting, and scaling, and how fatherhood taught him about balancing business and life. If you want an unfiltered look of what it's really like to build a community-focused fitness business complete with the hard knocks and real numbers, stick around. I'm Pat, and this is Certainty and Chaos. Jared Collinson. But I was trying to figure out like how long we've been friends. Did 17 years. That's a
really
wild concept. It's
half our lives, really.
I know. It's pretty cool. But cool, man. Well, look, thanks for doing this with me. Tell us your background. You're the owner of Flight Performance Fitness. You guys are based out of Massachusetts. Help us understand what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Yeah, it's funny because it does go all the way back to Springfield College where I met with my business partner, Dylan. He was doing exercise science as well. All through college, we joked about the fact that maybe we'd open a facility together one day because we had a lot of the same classes going through exercise science together. After college, we both started working the corporate fitness life. We both started working for Boston Sports Club, which is a bit of a drag, but you learn a lot of good things along the way. Like I really learned how to interact with people. I learned a little bit of the sales aspect. Gave me a couple of years to really master my craft and get good at actually coaching and doing that stuff. Because a lot of people want to go straight from no experience to gym owner. And I think that you actually need to do those hard yards of learning how to work with people, learning some of those soft skills of like sales and marketing yourself and stuff like that. And the grind of working through a sports club. Eventually that kind of ran its course. And another friend that we have in common was having his housewarming party and Dylan was going and we decided to carpool and we hadn't really seen each other. We kept in touch. We would chat like every couple weeks and here and there we'd see each other out at the bars in Boston, but we were both just venting about how we hated the corporate gym lives, hated the dealing with the managers and just all the crap that you deal with in a facility like that. And we basically were like, all right, dude, let's just do this. Let's just go out in a wing and just let it rip. So we set up like a meeting for the next week and we're like, all right, we'll just figure out how we're going to do this. And then about 6 months later, we had a gym up and running. So
Sick.
it was pretty crazy.
That's a quick transition, huh?
Yeah. There's a lot of lessons learned in that. And there's a lot of lessons learned in the 8 years. So we just celebrated 8 years in
Awesome.
September. So we've been open for 8 years now. Been pretty cool.
That's cool, man. So when you guys were doing the whole like from corporate gym to Flight, was it building up a client base you were going to take with you? Was it like a hard cut? Hey, we're done. We're going to grow it as we're there. What was that process like?
Yeah. Inherently, like there's like non-competes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And nothing's like super set in stone. And we had heard horror stories of other trainers leaving, but at the end of the day, if I leave and then they just decide to cancel their membership and come over, they can't really track that. If I'm actively on the floor saying, hey, you're going to come with me, I'm opening this gym. So I mentioned it to all my clients. I said, hey, look, I'm looking to do that. And you're going to think like personal training, you spend a lot of time with these people, 2-3 hours a week with some of them. So it's like, you actually spend a lot more time with your personal training clients than you do with a lot of your real friends. These people are people that are in your corner and they wanted you to win. They were pretty much willing to support me no matter what. But yeah, it wasn't super intentional, but that's how we opened the gym. And I think that's a testament of what I was mentioning before, getting really good at rapport, getting really good at our craft and building good relationships.
Yeah. What was that financial prep like? Personal training is effectively a service-based business, but there's a lot more overhead and liability than regular consulting. You've got your equipment, you've got rent or lease. What was that like going into there?
We completely undershot. And I feel like that's what everybody does. And that's what I tend to do at everything I do in my life. So I try to, nowadays, I really try to like jam on the brakes and really think things through from all different angles. But we looked at it, we're like, all right, how many sessions a week are we doing? How much can we charge? How much money do we think we can make per month? And then that kind of gave us the idea of like, all right, this is how much we can expect to be taking in every month. This is like where our expenses should be so that we can pay ourselves. Another thing that we didn't really know much about, and I would recommend anybody who goes into business is learn a lot about tax, because that was like one thing, and I don't know if we'll get into it, but that was one thing that really hurt us a year or so in, was we didn't realize that we weren't paying taxes on a lot of the stuff that we needed to be paying taxes on. So that really hurt us. But yeah, we raised some money from clients. And this was another benefit of us having this, was people that do personal training generally have a little bit of money. And we had a couple of higher net worth people that when we told them that we wanted to do that, they basically just gave us money as a prepay for services. So we were able to negotiate that. A lot of them didn't even ask for interest or anything like that. They might just buy 100 personal training sessions at $100 an hour and give us $10,000. So that was the large way that we funded getting up off the ground, doing the construction, getting the initial equipment that we needed.
Yeah, that's awesome. What went wrong during that process?
Everything. Yeah, I probably just not doing enough of the research of knowing what it was going to take to do everything. And that's very broad, I know. And this is probably something I didn't take as seriously as you should ask a lot of people that have been where you want to go, what they're doing and what they need to know or what their lessons were. And I think like Dylan and I both asked a couple people and this and that. I feel like anyone who's 26 years old, like they think they know everything. So I went into it thinking like, oh, we'll figure it out as we go. But like I said, we didn't have the right people in the right places at the time. So we didn't have a good accountant. We didn't have a good bookkeeper. So we didn't have anybody guiding us with that financial stuff because we're just like, oh, cool. We're making $16,000 a month. We have $3,000 in rent. We have this and this. Like we weren't planning for losing members. We weren't planning for tax. We weren't planning for like when we had a roof leak, like having to fix equipment and stuff like that. So we just didn't really have many plans in place around a lot of that stuff. And now we're part of a small gym business mastermind. And I've seen some people come in and they're coming in before they even open the gym. And I'm like, oh man, this person's just starting so much further ahead than where I started. So that's my biggest thing is just like mistakes wise. It's if I could go back, I would probably just tell myself to immerse myself either in a mastermind with some people that are doing the things that I want to do and learn what they're doing, get those systems set up ahead of time. But without rambling too much, like that, I think the biggest pains that we had was probably more around like the taxes and then even just having real like structure and standard operating procedures around like hiring people, onboarding people, all that stuff. We just winged everything. And to our, to pat ourselves on the back, I think we're pretty good at doing that. We really didn't have any systems in place of, oh, this is like what lead follow-up looks like, or like this person reaches out and they want to try out the gym, or they come in for an eval. And then we didn't have a written out process of how everything looked. So that made it very difficult that when Dylan and I weren't doing all of that stuff, like once we had people coming in, that there were just cracks and leaks everywhere.
Yeah, I feel like just what I know about you though, as well as that's almost like a strength is of you. I don't see you as like the, hey, let me sit in front of a spreadsheet for 6 hours and figure this out. It's just like
that's
a
my day now, man. That's my day
is
now.
Is it?
Yeah,
Dude, that's so funny.
You should
dude.
see the tabs on my computer right now, just like spreadsheets. So it's like all the way across.
It's just like you've always been the just do it guy, like hard charging, doesn't really matter. I'll figure it out. Even when, again, we could talk about your real estate investments too. Like I always just don't. I don't picture you as like, oh, you have 25 due diligence analysis sheets. Okay, this makes sense. Let's do it, figure it out, and learn from the hard knocks.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. This is a weird question, but you've gone from effectively like a personal trainer to a business owner. Like, how did you, I feel like that separates people from success and not success. What was that journey like for you to realize, hey, I am now no longer like in the business. I am the business, and it has to go to a certain point.
That was a long transition. So about a year. That I am not responsible for anything that's going on. Basically, like if I'm not here, someone has to fill in. I did take on our youth group, but I enjoy it. We didn't really have anyone that kind of fit that archetype that could work with kids and stuff like that. But aside from that, like my hours of coaching here at the gym from a personal training perspective, I do a decent amount of personal training, maybe 5 sessions a week. That's because I want to, and I want to stay in the craft. And there are people I like to work with. And one of them is one of the people that initially invested in Flight way long ago. So I feel like I do have some vested interest in that person. But the journey was tough, man, to be honest with you. And I think that this isn't like really highlighted. And these people that say, oh, you just got to do this, you got to do this, like delegate, you got to give the lower leverage tasks to people. Nobody really talks about how like time auditing and looking at how much time you're spending on working on the business, how much time you're spending on working in the business, and what are the good action steps to get to working out of the business. And that was definitely a long process for Dylan and I of relinquishing control to other coaches, coaching on the floor, us developing systems so that they know what to do, us developing our own training model so that all of our coaches are relaying the exact same thing that we would relay out there. It was a really long process, and it took us, initially, Dylan and I were coaching 12 hours a day. Then we backed off to maybe 8 hours a day and then 6 hours a day. And now we're pretty much hands off of like the actual product that's going on in the gym for the most part, aside from our personal training stuff. So it was like a really long transition, and it probably was a longer transition than some people do. But I think it's because we care about our product so much, and we've been trying to grow at like a steady growth that we weren't willing to step away so much and relinquish some of the control right away.
When you think about the early days, you talked about like tactically doing things wrong, right? Like not having
Yeah.
those mentors or not having those mastermind groups. What about your mental state during all of it? Was there ever a point of doubt where, hey, probably shouldn't have done this, or hey, I was making X, I'm not making any money? Like,
Yeah.
what was that like?
I know this is a testament to what you're saying. I just like to ram my head into things until it works.
Well, dude, some of these conversations with you, hell. So
Yeah. No, man, honestly, I could look back and say that some of it was like fight or flight. Like I was just in this mode where it's just like go. I was also like pursuing a rugby journey in my early years of trying to be a professional rugby player. And it was just like face down, head in. And I think that what I could have done and should have done is probably just step back and look a little bit more. Cause basically I was just, like I said, we were coaching like 12 hours a day. I was also a captain of the rugby team. We were practicing 4 to 6 hours a week. And then on Saturdays, I'd be traveling to like New York and stuff like that. So it's just like, I was on the go so much that I don't think I really had the opportunity to step back and look at and really assess the stuff that needed to get the levers that needed to get pushed forward, you know, if that makes sense.
Yeah, dude. I mean, it definitely does. So let me ask you this: the stage you're at now, right? Like, how long did it take you guys to get to profitability? And then what was that from that point? How long did it take you to actually start pulling money out of it? And then how long did it take you guys to become comfortable?
Yeah. At 26, I was crushing at Boston Sports Club. Like I was the dude, like I was the trainer there. Like I established myself as the trainer there, like good rapport with my clients. Like everyone in the gym knew me. I definitely was like the most skilled coach there. And that's not just patting myself on the back. I did Con Ed. I was just all over the place. And so many times I was getting clients from other trainers that they just weren't seeing success with other trainers. And going into owning the gym, Bill and I were both making 6 figures, which is like pretty wild as like a 26-year-old in that space. And while there is a lot of money to be made there, like we were grinding to get that. And immediately right off the bat, we took a huge pay cut because there was all that overhead and all that stuff that we did, that I had mentioned. Like we had to buy equipment and we had to pay Uncle Sam and all this stuff. Like the security blanket of working for a company and you just know that you get 45% or 50% of everything that you're working on is nice. And not knowing if your members are going to cancel. And because as soon as you open a gym, that's all on you, man. That's all on you is, can you keep your members? Can you get new members? Can you keep these people happy? Can you keep these people coming around? And then figuring out if your price point is right to make everything work. But to answer your second question that you just asked around like getting to where we are, we flush, all that stuff. And that probably goes to a lot of the mistakes that we made along the way was like, we thought as we started making money, we started seeing progress. I think we would jump the gun on a lot of things. So about a year in, we started seeing like capacity issues. And instead of looking at it as like, how can we work around this capacity issues? We like knocked down a wall, took on 2 more units, added more monthly revenue or monthly expenses, had some construction budget. Like that set us back like a year. Like we started seeing that we could be profitable. And instead of being like, all right, cool, how do we optimize this? We were just like, more space, we need more. So we knocked down a couple walls, doubled our square footage. And while it helped us with capacity and it helped us with the optics of it looking like there wasn't 1,000 people in a tiny little space, it really set us back. And we thought that we were in a good place to do that. And we didn't look at the financials. We didn't get to the point where we were like making enough money that we should be like, all right, cool, let's go ahead and do this. So that was like number one. And then there was like the whole transition of starting to hire people, right? Because now you need to pay someone else's bills. If I bring on a coach, like I got to give them enough hours to pay their rent and pay all their other expenses. And that's another thing that people don't really take into consideration. And I'm thinking about it now as I've gotten older and I have a house and I have kids and stuff like that. And a lot of our coaches are younger, but like they're going to get to the point where they want those things. And it's like it's pressure for you as a business owner to be able to provide those things and provide a safety blanket. No one's ever come up to us and said it, but I can imagine one of my coaches, not now because we're in a really good spot, but like 4 or 5 years ago being like, hey man, I want to have kids and I don't feel that secure right now. And it really came down to the amount of money that we're able to pay that individual for the work that they were doing. So like navigating those waters of going into hiring people and knowing that because early on when we started hiring people, like that money was coming out of me and Dylan's pocket. But we were like, okay, we need this person so that we can step back and work on the business a little bit more and grow the business. But I think we didn't necessarily know those levers that we could do to start making the business more money. But we did start to see that progress of like, all right, we can hire people, we can pay people to start coaching people so that we can focus on these other things a little bit more that we haven't really been paying attention to. So that was like a big hurdle. We opened this facility a year and a half ago. So May was a year. And that was another big setback in a way. I'd say probably 6 months leading up to us moving, or I guess a year moving up a year coming up to us moving, but it was like 6 months from like when we like decided this is the place and moving on. We had things hissing, like we had all our systems in place. We saw growth. We're like, all right, cool. This is exciting. I think we know what we're doing now. Like we have all of our SOPs in place for like how our trainers are going to do this. If a trainer leaves, this is what it's going to look like. This is how their clients are going to get managed. This is how that whole process looks. We had a good sales system. We had a good marketing system. We had a good follow-up system. We just had a lot of our ducks in a row. And we started hitting the ground running, like we were really hitting stride. And then our landlord told us that they didn't want to renew our lease. So we were already thinking about moving, looking for a different space, but we were like, all right, cool. We got everything going. And this was like probably one of our first mature decisions. We're like, let's not pull trigger and go right now. Let's stay here for another year. Let's make it like uncomfortable in this space, but we're in a profitable situation because we had just gotten our head out and we're like, all right, cool. Like now we're starting to make the money that we should. We're starting to hire people. We got everything lined up. And then that bomb happened. And then, so we started looking around, we were searching for spaces. There's like nothing that works. And this is like another learning thing. Like depending on your business that you're going into, if you need a physical location, do your research of what the specific town is going to require of that space. We're looking for flex industrial space, but zone codes and stuff like that, they really depict what kind of businesses can go in certain places. So immediately, a lot of the spaces that looked like they would work weren't going to work because they were zoned for other things. So that was like a big hurdle that we had to go through, and going through like zoning boards and going through like building inspectors and stuff like that, just to see if like this building would work or this space would work. So something I learned with that was find another place that had the same occupancy. So like fitness center, or they were a like indoor pitching place or something like that, something like a gym for us. Cause then we wouldn't have to change occupancy. Cause when you change occupancy, there's like all this stuff all these flags that get raised, like how many parking spots do you have? Do you have two forms of egress? Do you like, without going too far in the weeds with that stuff, it was a big hurdle for us to find. And really with 6 months left in our lease, we were told that. So we're like trying to find a new place in 6 months. But I'll wrap it all up with, we found, and I won't even tell you the one place that we signed a lease and gave them checks and started working on it. And then the building inspector said we couldn't go there retroactively, which was terrible. But so we found this building that we're currently in, and it was for sale because there was nothing for lease within a 5-mile radius. And we're like, if we do that, we're going to lose a lot of our clients. So we found this building for sale and we're like, all right, we're going to try to buy a building. Like we're going to figure that out. So we started going through financing and stuff like that. And we wanted to go through the Small Business Association. Not without doing our research, we didn't know that could take 6 months. So it was taking longer and longer. And the building owner was essentially like, hey, if you guys can't buy this building, like I need to put it back on the market. And we were just figuring out financing and all that stuff. And we pretty much had it lined up, but it was just going to take longer than he was willing to take. So he extended the olive branch a little bit and offered us a lease to buy agreement on the building that we're in, basically a 5-year lease at this rate. And then with the option to buy at the end of year 4 with a fixed purchase price. So it worked out. We're like, all right, cool. We'll do that. We signed that. We had to do a bunch of zoning changes. We had to do a bunch of construction. This was like an Israeli school before. So there was like all these little school rooms. There was like foot washing stations all over the place. No, we got rid of the foot washing stations. There was like these like red carpet with all these like crowns on it. It was like, it looked nothing like it looks like now. And realistically, we got the keys to this place January 1st. And we needed to get in here March 1st because that was like the last, we were supposed to be up on our lease in January at the old place. And we had to beg, get down on our knees and be like, hey, we're gonna, like, we don't have a place yet. You can't do this to us. But again, without going too far into that stuff, like we got them to give us a month for 3 more months. They charged us up the nose to freaking to stay on for a month for 3 more months. And then we got to the March 1st, which was like our like hard out of the other location date. And we hadn't even gotten a building permit for this building yet. But so I was like,
That's awesome.
I'm like in mid-February, I'm just like, I go to all the contractors. I'm like, permits coming, just go in there and start ripping the whole thing apart. Long story short, we ended up getting a fine and getting stuff like shut back. But I don't know, my back was against the door. So it was like, all right, like I'm either going to have to close my business for 2 months and lose all my clients to other gyms, or I'm just going to take a fine on the chin. So I was like, I'm taking a fine on the chin. But we didn't open till May. We were able to basically like, I don't want to say squat because we were paying, but the other landlord was like, you guys got to be out of here. And I was like, the other place isn't open. Here's my check. Here's a check. But we opened this place, but same thing. We went into it. We had a bunch of contractors. We had a bunch of huge building expenses. We replaced the whole air conditioning unit. There was like 4 big industrial units on the roof. We went way over budget is realistically what I'm saying. And we like really thought we did everything we could in terms of forming that budget. And I think anybody who like builds a house or does any big project like that, you always go over budget. But we ended up going, and we knew that we were upgrading our expenses by coming here. Bigger building, more overhead, stuff like that. Our rent was twice as what it was going to be at the other place. Plus we took out some personal loans. So realistically, like we're paying about 3 times what we were paying at the other place but we knew that we were going to be able to handle what we thought we were like taking on with the money that we were starting to build and the progress that we were going. But we went over budget, like probably close to $200,000. So essentially that was like all of any sort of profit that was going to happen here in the first year and a half was going straight to that. 200K is a lot of freaking money, man. If you break that down month over month we've been here for 18 months, and happy to say that realistically, we just paid the last bit of that off like in December. So we're finally out of that. But it was brutal for Dylan and I. Like, we're paying our coaches. We got 8 full-time employees, including him and me. So we were going through these, even in the last year and a half, of just like, all right, do we hire this person? Because if we hire this person, I can get off the floor and I can make more money for the business. But we don't have enough money to pay that person. So it's going to come out of our money. It's going to come out of that 200K that we went over. If we could just make it really uncomfortable and we can work and we can do this. And that's the maturity that we took on, was just like, nope, like we know what it's going to take for us to grow this business. So we need to hire someone and train them so that they can do the product and we can just keep feeding the machine.
Yeah. How did all that impact your relationship with Dylan? Were you guys pretty in sync, or did that create tense
early days due to it? We struggled with our relationship because the kid's been all in since we've been here. And I'm not saying I'm not all in, but like I said, I was like pushing a pro rugby career. I was working with the Free Jacks for a little while, and it took me a long time to realize that wasn't the right thing for our business. There's a lot of good things that it did for our business in terms of driving us as like a rugby gym and all this stuff. But realistically, those were years that we could have been growing in the way that we have been in the last 3 or 4 years. But I was like on a vacation playing pro rugby and being the strength coach of a pro rugby team, which took up time is money, man. It was like probably a 30 to 40 hour a week commitment that I was doing there, putting in another 30 and 40 at the gym. But my headspace wasn't like, all right, how do we grow this gym right now? Which is where Dylan was at the time. So there was some rift there. But no, in this process of us like figuring everything out, getting standard operating procedures across the board with everything, like we've ironed out responsibilities. And I think early on where we struggled was we were both doing everything. So like an email came in, it was like, if he saw it first, he'd respond. If I saw it first, I'd respond. But then if the person responded to me, but I hadn't seen that response, Dylan was like, oh, I didn't know if, so just stupid stuff like that. So we got clear role delineation. This is your stuff. This is my stuff. We meet on it. And it's like anything that like crosses over, there's, hey, I need your input on this, or, hey, this is your responsibility. So like that was super helpful for us. But no, man, like there's been stress with everything with this new location, but we have everything. It feels okay because we know how everything's supposed to go, if that makes sense. There's clarity around where we're going, how we're doing it. We're just in the mode of, in the last like 18 months, have just been like patience. There's the actionable things that we can do, try to grow the business. We know that there are certain months that the business doesn't do well. What can we do in those months to counteract that? There are months that the business is going to go really well. How do we add fuel to that fire? So that's the stuff that we've been focusing on to get ourselves out of that position into where we are now. But there's been like, for us, there's been so much clarity between the two of us that hasn't been an issue, I don't think, with our relationship because of us getting things in the right, tidied up, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I'm in it's almost like when you're in these early stage founder roles, the titles are irrelevant, right? You're doing everything. Everybody's doing everything all the time, and it does get jumbled up. So you mentioned, so you guys didn't end up going SBA to buy the building because you had the lease option, right? That was the direction you guys went, you said?
Yeah, I mean, so we have and we were actually literally just talking about it yesterday. We're like, do we want to buy this building? So we're in a lease to buy agreement. So we're paying rent, but we have a fixed sale price. The nice thing about that is 3% on a $2 million building is a lot of money over 4 years. So that's appealing. Also, not to mention, we spent probably $500,000 on a build out here. So that's CapEx that we put into this building. So it'd be silly not to if things don't work out the way that we think it should, because we basically remodeled this entire building. But going into it, we were looking at other locations that were going to be more per month from a rental perspective in terms of per square footage and stuff. And they were going to do the build out for us. And we did calculate it to the point where like, all right, at that 5-year mark, which is like the 5-year lease with we have to execute the option to buy it by year 4, which will be the start of 2027. We'll have to know if we want to buy this building. and give them the option to put it back on the market. But we knew that, and we did rough calculations like, all right, over the 5 years, we'll pay this much in rent. And we'll have to be gone no matter what if we rented this other space, or we can go into this space. We're going to have to pay a bunch of money up front, but our monthly payment's going to be lower. At the end of that 5 years, it was going to be about the same amount of money. So we're like, why don't we at least give ourselves the option of buying that building? Because that might be a good opportunity for us from like a, long-term investment perspective. But we have to figure out how we're going to come up with $500,000.
Yeah. The reason I was asking, I don't think people fully understand how difficult it is to work with the SBA. Then how much they underwrite and how much they lean literally everything. So like you're talking about going all in, like the level of scrutiny you get put and the things they're leaning your house, they're leaning everything you have. And then you're also taking out personal loans to buy other things. Like that's a commitment right there,
Scary.
man.
It's scary, man. It's scary. You got to really back yourself, man. Yeah, no. So like we were going that route. We did a lot of paperwork and we were working on that stuff, but it was just taking too long. So we didn't really follow through with it. That being said, I think we will if we choose to buy, and it will give us a year to get the whole thing sorted, and we'll probably start it ahead of time. Cause I think by summer next year, Dylan and I were talking about yesterday, I think by summer next year, we'll probably have a good idea if this is going to be the place that we want it to be. Just to give you a quick layout, we got 2 4,000 square foot floors.
Oh, wow.
And essentially, we think it might be better. And this is what we initially wanted, was just like a big warehouse. And we could put some like dividers up, like walls, if you will, that allow us to do different training things, different things. So we can have a youth group going on. There's like adults over there. And maybe there's a high school group here, that we could do multiple things at once under the same roof. But so we're like, with our growth, like there's just maybe some logistical stuff about, are we going to be able to do what we want to do with the space? I'm in the second floor right now with the second floor to make it fit our business model. And that will be like our biggest, decision come a year and a half from now. Is this where we want to be? And then we'll have to figure that out. But
that's pretty, what's an average gym? Like your type of gym? I mean, I feel like 4,000 square foot is massive, isn't it? Or no?
For our space, if we talk about a lot of the gyms in our mastermind, they're usually operating at 3,000, 4,000 square feet. And so we do what's called a small group training model, which is basically like six clients to one coach, but we have it done on a bigger scale. So like downstairs, we have 12 stations. So there's 2 coaches and there's 12 people per group. We run multiple groups in the morning, multiple groups at night. What we want to do right now, we have a physical therapy group that subleases from us up here from 7 to 5. And then we run groups before that, in the morning before 7 a.m. and then after 5 p.m. Ideally, once their lease is up in January, we'll be trying to utilize this space to basically do what we're doing downstairs, but just do it up here as well. So that's what I'm saying. We got to figure out if that's going to make sense for us long term.
Yeah.
If we can utilize this space up here the way that we have downstairs utilized.
Yeah. What about the next phase, like for Jared? What do you want to be doing next? You've got kids now, you have systems in place where you're not in the actual operation. I wouldn't say in the actual operation, but doing the training sessions and stuff like that. What does it look like for you?
Yeah. Again, Dylan and I had like a big picture conversation just in terms of going into our annual planning, obviously. And I think both of us I don't think we'll ever be like hands off, like CEO or not CEO, like outside of that. I think we're always going to want to be in it. And even from like a multiple location perspective, I don't think we'd ever want to grow to a point where we don't feel like we have a pulse on what's going on. And that's completely fine for people to want to do that. I got into this because I want to help people. I want to change people. One of our core values is impact. Like how many people can we impact? So I think as long as we are able to stay in it and help as many people, and some of that is like hiring coaches and opening another location and doing that. But as long as we can do that, I never want to be like a big like F45 or even just like a 5 or 6 location. I think 1 to 3 is probably like that sweet spot for us. And we probably do those other locations a little bit differently now, knowing what we've gone through and everything from like a system standpoint. But yeah, just doing what we're doing. Like right now, I've been largely in like the marketing role, which is pretty exciting because that's something I knew nothing about. Didn't go to school for marketing. So it's like it's challenging for me. I like to learn. Learning is like a big thing for me, like across the board with everything. I just love learning about things. So it's been cool to really have to dive into that and learn how I'm going to leverage joint ventures and going out in the community, how we're going to get people in the door. So that's been a fun thing. So I don't know. I just like to be challenged, and I don't think I'd ever be that person that just sits back and collects money. Like early on, I was like, oh, I want to retire early, but no, man, I love coming to work. Like coming to work is next to being with my family is the best thing I have.
Yeah. And I'd love to shift to that personal side a little bit. So you're fairly new dad, man. You talked about rugby earlier. I know you also invest in real estate. What does that balance look like with flight? Is it possible? Is it just like full integration of life and work or all that?
I think like anything, you just have to like reevaluate all like constantly. You need to be like, all right, how am I doing here? How am I doing here? How am I doing here? Instead of getting to the point 6 months down the line, you're like, oh, I failed here. If you're constantly saying like, how can I be better? What can I do? What are the measurements that I want to like have a grip on? Am I like present in my business? Do my coaches like care about me? Do they like me? My employees? That's something that I care about here. Is the business growing? My relationship with Dylan good? At home, it's just my wife happy with like how much I'm around. Do my kids enjoy like spending time with me? Like those are things that I think about. And then I reverse engineer those into actions of how much water I'm putting into every bucket. You know what I mean? I think that's really important because like I said, I used to just put my head down and go to work. And then all of a sudden I missed a good friend's wedding because I was at a rugby tournament. And I was like, is that part of my core values? Is that who I want to be? And I'm looking at it, I'm like, nah, man, like I should have gone to that wedding and just told my rugby team to screw off that weekend. But that's like the time where if you reflect and you actually ask yourself, what really matters to me in this world? And what do I want to be known for? And what do I want people to think of me? Like, I want people to think that I'm a very like good dad. I'm around a lot. I'm not just hands off. Like, I'm not just putting my kids to bed or I'm not out screwing around on the weekends. I want to spend all the time that I can with my kids. I want to get the business to a point where if my kids have a soccer game at 2 p.m., I can just go and I'm not like tied down to work. But that doesn't mean that from my work-life balance that I'm just abandoning this place. I want my coaches to be like, oh, cool. Like he earned that.
Mhm.
He's in at 4 today. He's in at 4 today so that he can be out for 3 o'clock to watch his son's soccer game. Like that's very important to me. Like looking at who I am as a person, it took me, and this is just like getting older, right? You just reflect on things. Like I've definitely always cared a lot about what other people think about me. And I think I used to just try to like impress people to do that. What's the cool thing that I can do to get this person to like really admire me? But now I'm just like, no, it's not even about that. It's just about sticking true to what your principles are and what you want from life.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm in the same way. And again, I can't tell you how many podcasts I listen to when it's these big time real estate investors that are 8, 9 figures and all they talk about is the regrets in life of not being around their family. And is the success worth it at that point? And I guess,
Yeah.
do you think this is like a weird question, but do you think you obviously learned that you wanted that part of yourself through experience. Do you think you would have gotten the gym to where it is today if you found that balance early on? Or do you think the success that you had from the gym was because of how dedicated you are, even if it was sacrificing other things that were important to you?
Yeah, man, that's a loaded question because it is hard because there's information and there's grit, right? There's, okay, like how well prepared could I be for this? Or how hard am I willing to work for it? And I think that I've always just had this drive to bust my ass as hard as I possibly can for anything. And I think early on, it was like so misdirected, like I was alluding to. And now that I have this more like wise approach but I have both now is what I'm trying to say is now I have this ability to go in as hard as I need to be, but like probably still ask like the questions of what is this going to take for me to do it, which I think took a long time for me to learn. And I'm not saying that I'm like a master at it now, but I definitely slow down a lot more when it comes to making big time decisions. Whereas before I just went face first in it, but without going too dark or too deep into like family stuff. But I realized what I wanted to be as a dad for lack of some things that I was getting from my dad. And growing up, I don't think you really know this stuff when you're growing up. And outside looking in, a lot of people like, and my dad was at a ton of rugby games when we were in college and stuff like that. And he was always like my biggest supporter and my biggest fan, but I definitely lacked a lot of his presence. So he did that stuff when we got a little bit later, but when I was growing up, he wasn't really around. He was working all the time. And I think he had that, they come from that generation of, I'm going to work and put food on the table. That's my responsibility. I think our generation is now being like, okay, dads are going to be more present. Dads are going to parent and stuff like that. So like, it was very important to me when the kids arrived that I was not going to be that I was going to be around as much as possible. So that's been definitely, it was a struggle for me early on of probably more on the work side of things of being like, all right, am I getting done what I need to get done to help the business drive forward so that I can do these other things with the family? Because that balance is hard, man. But like I said, I'm trying to be very intentional about it. And I'm trying to reflect a lot on it of how much time am I spending at home? How much time am I spending at work? How present am I? Because early on, that's where I was really struggling. The first 6 months or so, I was really, and I'm not saying this as a bragging thing, but like this industry is hard. Like Dylan and I, we were putting in probably 100+ hours a week for 5, 6 years, 7 years. Kids were born and I took 6 weeks off, which was nice. But when I got back to work, I basically tried to, and we took some roles off of me right away, but I was trying to fit 60 hours of work into 35 hours a week. And I felt like I was failing. I was struggling. I wasn't getting the stuff done. And for me, that stuff like hurts because I'm all about like, taking ownership and taking responsibility for stuff. And when you know that you're like not doing what you're supposed to do, like it hurts. And you can ask people for help, but if you're just not getting it done. So I was carrying that stuff home with me and I was just feeling down. And like Chris and I have been struggling with the twins too. We don't have any family around. My dad lives in Spain. My mom passed away. Her mom passed away. My sister's down in the Cape. Just like mobilizing it's difficult. So raising 2 kids, like we didn't have any kids before that. So it was like there's a whole, you can talk a lot about that. Like the learning process of that, man, like that's huge. But so like buttoning it up was like those first 6 months were really hard because I wasn't getting done when I felt like I needed to get done here for the progress that I wanted this place to be so that I could have the life that I wanted, you know? And so I was carrying that home with me and I wasn't as present when I was home. So in September, I actually went to Kristen and I was like, hey, look, like it's going to suck. And I don't want to do this because basically what I was doing is I was coming in here Monday, Wednesday, all day. I get in at 3:30 in the morning and then I'd go home at 7 o'clock at night and I would just fucking grind all day. Like it was just like boom, boom. And I would get so much work done, but it still wasn't enough. And then Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'd get up with the kids. I'd like do morning routine and stuff like that. She's still working until about noon. And then I'd come in from 1 till 6 or so. You've spent the day with your kid. It's really tiring. So I'd come in at 1 o'clock and I'm like, probably haven't slept. Maybe one of the kids was up all night. It was hard for me to get meaningful work done on those days. When you're the owner of a business, it's like everybody has like little things where like you walk by and like, oh, Jared this and oh, Jared that. And like you get so boggled down in that stuff. And that stuff's important because if you don't handle that stuff, then people are going to be like, oh, that guy's hands off. Mm-hmm. So it was difficult. And in September, I went back to, I told Kristen, I was like, hey, look, I needed to go in 4 days a week. Now I'm coming in 4 days a week. I have long days. I'm here 5 or 6 in the morning until 6 or 7 at night. I'm probably doing about 48 hours, which is more than what I was doing, not what I was doing before. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday is like, I'm home and I'm so present. Like I'm not doing anything work related. And honestly, my coaches have been really helpful with that. And Dylan's been really supportive of that, of just like, when I'm here Monday through Thursday, I'm like on and like in a somewhat selfish way. And this is probably something I need to get better at. I'm not really thinking about home when I'm here because I'm like, this is my job right now. I need to focus on this stuff so that Friday, Saturday, Sunday come around and I can just be the most present dad and be the most present partner. You know, that's just what I found has worked for me, but through a lot of struggle, like that stuff is tough, man.
Yeah, that's the reason why I wanted to start this thing is like, people don't understand is, yeah, there are the steps of starting a business where, okay, you do 1 through 3 to get to cash, but no one really grasps the psychological warfare and the emotional distress and the balance of life and how everything goes wrong at the wrong places and how hard it is internally to make the right decision when you're going through it. So that like vulnerability was pretty awesome. And thanks for sharing it.
No, and I like what you said there too of what's going to go wrong. And I think that my maturing as like a business owner is just, I have my level of giving a fuck has just gone way down. Like something that used to ruin my day or set me off. I'm just like,
crazy, right? It's crazy.
Here it is. Cause it's just like, you just become like, it's like get callous, man. Like you just get calloused. It's just like, oh, this person canceled. Like someone canceling 6 years ago used to like wreck my week. Now it's just like, all right, we know from data that we're going to lose 8 members a month, 6 members a month. That's just going to happen. It sucks, but we have systems in place so that we're making sure that we're getting more than 6 to 8 members. So we're netting 12 members a month so that we got growth. So it's just like, once you start like bulletproofing those problems, things become not as bad. And like I said, like 200K in 18 months, it's just like, if I could do that, like I can fucking do anything, man. I'm not like, I'm like, if I can pay that off, if Dylan and I can do that, like I'll take on like the Spartan 300. I don't care.
That's what it really comes from, right? It's like, yeah, you can look at data and see how many people you're going to lose. Okay, this is what it looks like from a statistical standpoint, but like you've experienced way worse. So all of these other things, like you said, it becomes callous. Like it's just these challenges that you encounter, it's a nothing anymore. Yeah. And that's one of the, I told people like my entrepreneurial story, like I've definitely not made it yet, but like my entire story is a bounce back story. And so like people don't understand how you get comfortable with these failures and these speed bumps. And that's all it is, dude. It's like a comfort in getting punched in the face over and over again to know it's not that big a deal. This is, what am I going to do? I'm not going to stop. You know what I mean?
Am I going to stop because of this?
Yeah.
Yeah, another one of those ones was like losing our first employee or our first fire. And early on, that just hurt. It hurts. Like you lose, like for us, we're in a service-based business. So the way that it works is like our coaches all service a certain amount of our clients. Like they write programs for them. They check in with them. They make sure they're like they're projecting their goals and stuff like that. So we lose someone who's like working with 40 people. We bring in a new coach. It's not that easy to just be like, hey, here's Pat's going to take over all this stuff for you now. They're like, I don't know, Pat. So like we've bulletproofed ourselves with stuff like that. Like it's still never a great thing, but it's just if we were to lose a coach, like we have whole operating procedure of how this is going to happen, how the clients are going to get managed, who's going to step in, how many people are going here, how many people are going there, how we're going to manage that, how are we going to check in on day one? Are we going to check in on day 10? Are we going to like that? We have this whole thing. So it's just like, once you experience that stuff and then you figure out how to fix it, it's not as big of a problem anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Yeah, that's good. Dude, I know we're rounding to the end. Thanks for coming on. I love you to death, and I'm sure I'm going to talk to you 1,000 more times over the next few months. But I appreciate it. Appreciate you being vulnerable, telling the story. It really depicts everything I'm trying to accomplish with this. Is like, hey, there's what people see, and then there's what people don't see. And people will probably look at you and see you from Springfield College to the gym you have now, and have absolutely no idea all of the shit you went through to get to where you are today. And probably shit you'll go through to get to where you're going. But before we jump off, what would you tell 26-year-old Jared? If you could go talk to him right now, general business advice, doesn't have to be about building a gym, but like something that, hey, will never expect this to happen. Here's what you should do differently.
Yeah, it's being vulnerable. Like the stuff that I just said is not stuff, that's stuff that I wouldn't tell people when I was 26. So like I hid from stuff like that. I hid from hard conversations. I hid from like asking for help. So asking for help is the biggest thing of knowing, all right, who can help me right now? Because I think there's a sense of pride when you're a little bit younger of being like, I can figure it out. I know everything. But realistically, it's find people that are experts at what you're looking to do or at something that is part of what you're looking to do and lean on those people to do their job without sounding too much of those influencers that are like, oh, you got to refer out, you got to do this and that. There's going to be a decent amount of things that you need to take in-house and you need to handle until it makes the right sense to hand it off. But if you don't really know what you're doing with stuff and you're going to spend half your time doing this task that you're not even doing right, and then it's going to screw you later, like you're better off just paying someone else and doing what you're really good at to make sure you're doing it right.
Amen. Awesome. Where can people find more about Flight?
Flight. Yeah. So flightperformanceandfitness.com is our website. Full discretion, our website is more about converting people than, so it's like a very sign up now kind of thing. But honestly, our social media is like where you get a good pulse of what goes on here. So that's Flight_performance on Instagram. That's where we do a lot of our stuff. We're a big community gym, and that's really the image that we try to put on there. So that's where you can find us, flightperformanceandfitness@gmail.com if you have any questions about anything. Yeah, that's us.
All right, good stuff. Thanks, Jared.
Yeah, buddy.